Yeah, one of the things that, in my program, I've got guys that, they love baseball, they love pitching, and so a lot of guys I'll have younger guys. And so we teach the knuckleball because it allows them to be able to, they're still able to compete at a high level because it's a nasty pitch, but
Love that.
yeah, it's the least taxing pitch in the arm because it's not a max effort pitch. And there's guys, they're pitching into their late 40s with it. R.A. Dickey famously won a Cy Young Award. I think he was like 38, pitching into his 40s without even having a UCL ligament. And so a big reason is because it's simply not max effort. Like you're going to be throwing it at maybe 80%, something like that, plus or minus a little bit. And from what I've seen, and in my own experience of throwing, is that a lot of the injuries happen at max effort. Like if you just go below that, it doesn't necessarily negate the possibility of arm injury 100%, but it seems to me that it's like it definitely minimizes the risk a ton. So it seems like a lot of it is just that everybody's taught max effort from like a very young age, and that's just kind of the way they
Yeah.
throw. So have you seen anything like that in your experience of like, there's like like you can throw a little bit less than max effort, you're going to be a lot better, but then once you kind of go to that top limit, there's like a limit of the ligaments and what they can handle?
The UCL ligament can only withstand a certain amount of forces, newton meters of force. And then after that, it literally breaks down and tears.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, everything has to kind of work in sync with one another in order to prevent that from happening. Now, if I had to make a recommendation to a youth athlete who wants to become a pitcher and develop into a thrower or pitcher later on in life at a higher level, I would say get rid of the radar guns. Try not to track your speed so much. Don't worry about how fast you're throwing the ball. Worry about how it's coming out. Worry about your delivery. Worry about your location.
Yeah, I've been posting stuff on that. There's like a number of guys that have said that. I think maybe the most famous elbow, Tommy John guy, Dr. Andrews, that's what he says, like, please just get rid of the radar guns. And that's one of the biggest things. And it's tough, man, because that's just like, people obsess over that.
They
And
do, and it's pitch after pitch after pitch. Trying to get to the 1 mile more per hour, 2 more miles per hour. I think it's doing more harm than good. Not to say there's not a place for radar guns. I think they certainly serve their purpose. If we're tracking guys velo day to day or week to week, or if someone's coming off of an injury and we want to make sure that they're throwing at a certain percentage of their max velocity, I think there's certainly a purpose for it, and it fits in rehab or it fits in baseball. But I think you and I can agree on this. At least I think we can. Is that when we take it out on a daily basis, every single pitch. If I have a kid, if I ask them to throw at 70%, they're probably going to be throwing at 80%, 90%. We ask a kid to throw full max, 95, 100%. They're going to try to throw harder than that, and that's where we start running into problems and issues. Believe it or not, fastballs are more detrimental to your elbow and your shoulder than throwing breaking balls or off speed pitches.
absolutely, yeah. The one thing like I've told kids, well, so like everybody wants to, develop to the best pitcher they can, right? That's why we're playing. And so, I've told guys, it's like, look, if you want to be throwing 95 one day and you want to make the big leagues, you think that reaching a certain velocity milestone when you're 11 or 12 is like important. But in my estimation, and you can give me your thoughts on this, if you have two players, one who focuses on their mechanics, clean throws, hitting their location, not max effort when they're younger, he will actually end up throwing harder when he's 18, 19, 20 than a guy who's, trying to blow up the radar gun when he's 10 years old. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. This is a 7-year study looked at mechanics of youth baseball pitchers,
Mhm.
and the changes are really most significant between the ages of 9 to 13 for kinematics. This is your motion.
Mhm.
And between the ages 13 to 15, it's more significant the changes are more significant. They occur with the kinetics. This is where you start to increase your forces. So really what this means is that the forces start to increase once you start to get into high school age, kind of around that eighth grade, ninth grade range. And really what this article is saying is that if good mechanics are not taught by the start of high school during their puberty or skeletal maturation phase, when power starts to really increase, the potential for risk of injuring the shoulder and elbow starts to increase dramatically. So really what that says is that mechanics are paramount. They're super important to teach at the youth level. We really shouldn't be worrying about how fast we're throwing the ball. We shouldn't be worrying about the velocity. We should be worried about the mechanical structure of the throw of the pitch and how the ball is coming out, and everything looks kind of in sync with one another. Because we know that throwing a baseball is it's like timing. It's like swinging a golf. It's like swinging a golf club. Timing is like so imperative and essential. And we have one thing that's off with the timing, it's gonna just kind of unravel almost like a row of dominoes. And have that domino effect where we're going to just have this cascade of bad things occurring.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, at the young ages, yeah, it's just got to be, and it's tough because, I mean, I coached travel ball for a while and I got out of it because it was just, I mean, any parents listening to this are probably like, just can totally relate, but like the whole atmosphere is wild where people are like trying to cheat to win, you know, 8-year-old games. And I was just talking to a parent earlier today where he was talking about like 5U baseball and they're like kicking the pitching machine and stuff to try to cheat and stuff. And it's just like, at that age, man, you don't know which kid's going to be a big leaguer, which kid's going to be done with baseball before middle school. It's just, they need to be learning good mechanics, having fun. And honestly, that should be really up until, kind of like, high school, even, till junior, senior year. You just have no idea how you're going to develop. And so it's got to be mechanics focused, learning to pitch because like I give the example of Ben Joyce. He was throwing 65 miles an hour his freshman year of high school. And, his parents didn't even take baseball seriously. And they just thought he just was a scrub, basically. Now he's throwing 105, right? So he actually had an advantage. Justin Verlander talks about this. He said, Verlander, we could look up the quote. He says, I literally, you know, pity the guys that are throwing 90 as freshmen because they're going to have all these arm injuries. He's like, I was fortunate that I had a slow burn with my velocity, is what he says. I wasn't throwing super hard when I was a freshman, sophomore. It happened once he was developed. And me and Verlander's pitching at like 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really got to be something where we're able to raise consciousness for parents out there that they're able to understand that these youth levels to not get caught up in this and to just learn to good mechanics, pitch, have fun, hit your spots. The knuckleball is part of that as it's the easiest pitch on the arm and it's a time to do it when you're younger. And then if you need to focus on velo, I say when you're 17, 18, just understand the risk, right? Because sometimes, guys are going to do it, but there's even at an older age, there's going to be risk.
Yeah, 100%. And I can actually read to you some of, and this is right out of USA Baseball recommendations, and this kind of steamrolls into what we're talking about. It's a very smooth transition here. But the number one thing that USA Baseball recommends for the youth baseball player in Little League is focus on athleticism, physical fitness, and have fun. And
Yeah.
that's it, right?
Hmm.
There's other guidelines or recommendations there, but that's, in my opinion, that's the biggest one.
Hmm.
Then we have to focus on mechanics, like we talked about, um, kinematics, like the sequencing of the event of throwing a baseball, like how to pitch properly.
Hmm.
And there's also all these other recommendations that USA Baseball has as well. But